Hello, friends. A big, loving, warm welcome to our very own channel, Ammu&You, where I, Ammu, as I am universally known as now, is again all set with a wonderful story to narrate to you. A story written by a very accomplished writer, personality, multifaceted personality, I Satyajit Ray. And the story that I want to narrate to you is Fritz. Fritz is a story that Satyajit Ray has written, one of the stories on paranormal yawners by the great Satyajit Ray. So, Fritz, the narrator speaks. After having stared at Joyonto for a whole minute, I could not help asking him, "Are you well? You seem to be in low spirits today." Joyonto quickly lost his slightly preoccupied air, gave me a boyish smile and said, "No, on the contrary, I'm feeling a lot better. This place is truly wonderful. You've been here before. Didn't you know how good it was?" I had nearly forgotten, Joyonto sighed. Now some of my memories are coming back slowly. The bungalow certainly appears unchanged. I can even recognize some of the old furniture, such as these cane chairs and tables. The bearer came in with tea and biscuits on a tray. I poured. "When did you come here last?" 31 years ago. I was 6 then. We were sitting in the garden of the circuit house in Bundi. We had arrived only that morning. Jayanto and I were old friends. We had gone to the same school and college. He now worked in the editorial division of a newspaper, and I taught in a school. Although we had different kinds of jobs, it had not made any difference to our friendship. We had been planning a trip to Rajasthan for quite some time. The main difficulty lay in both of us being able to get away together. That had at last been made possible. Most people go to Jaipur, Udaipur, or Chittor when they go to Rajasthan. But Joyonto kept talking about going to Bundi. I had no objection, for having read Tagore's poem, The Fort of Bundy. I was certainly familiar with the name of the place and felt a pleasurable excitement at the prospect of actually seeing the fort. Not many people came to Bundi, but that did not mean that there was not much to see there. It could be that from the point of view of a historian, Udaipur, Jodhpur, and Chittor had a lot to offer. But simply as a beautiful place, Bundi was perfect. However, Joyonto's insistence on Bundi did puzzle me somewhat. I learned the reason on the train when we were coming down. Joyonto's father, Animesh Das Gupta, had worked in the archaeological department. His work sometimes took him to historical places, and Joyonto had, as a child, come to Bundi. He had always wanted to return after growing up, just to see how much the modern Bundi compared to the image that he had in his mind. The circuit house was really rather splendid. Built during the time of the British, it must have been at least 100 years old. It was a single-storied building with a sloping tiled roof. The rooms had high ceilings, and the skylights had long dangling ropes which could be pulled to open and shut them. The veranda faced the east. Right opposite it was a huge garden with a large number of roses in full bloom. Behind these were a lot of trees, which obviously housed a vast section of local birds. Parrots could be seen everywhere and peacocks could be heard, but only outside the compound. We had already been on a sightseeing tour of the town. The famous Fort of Bundy was placed amidst the hills. We had seen it from a distance that day, but decided to go back to take a closer look. The only reminders of modern times were the electric poles. Otherwise, it seemed as though we were back in old Rajputana. It was difficult to believe we were living in the age of machines. I noticed Joyonto had turned rather quiet after arriving in Bundi. Perhaps some of his memories had returned. It is easy enough to feel a little depressed when visiting a place one may have seen as a child. Besides, Joyonto was certainly more emotional than most people. Everyone knew that. He put his cup down on the table and said, "You know, Shankar, it is really quite strange. The first time I came here, I used to sit cross-legged on these chairs. It seemed as though I was sitting on a throne. Now the chairs seem both small in size and very ordinary. If I hadn't returned, those memories would have remained stuck in my mind forever." I said, "Yes, that's perfectly natural. As a child, one is small in size, so everything else seems large. One grows bigger with age, but the size of all the other things remain the same, doesn't it?" We went for a stroll in the garden after tea. Joyonto suddenly stopped walking and said, "Deodar." I stared at him. "A Deodar tree. It ought to be here somewhere," he said, and began striding towards the far end of the compound. Why did he suddenly think of a Deodar tree? A few seconds later, I heard his voice exclaiming jubilantly, "Yes, it's here, exactly where it was before." "Of course it's where it was before," I said. "Would a tree go roaming about?" Joyonto shook his head impatiently. "No, that is not what I meant. All I meant was that the tree is where I thought it might be." "But why did you suddenly think of a tree?" Joyonto stared at the trunk of the tree, frowning. Then he shook his head slowly and said, "I can't remember that now." Something had brought me near the tree. I had done something here. A European? European? No, I can't recall anything at all. Memory is indeed a strange business. They had a good cook in the circuit house. Later in the evening, while we sat at the oval dining table having dinner, Joyonto said, the cook they had in those days was called Dilawar. He had a scar on his left cheek, and his eyes were always red. But he was an excellent cook. Joyonto's memories began returning one by one soon after dinner when we went back to the drawing room. He could recall where his father used to sit and smoke a cheroot, where his mother used to knit, and what magazines lay on the table. And slowly, in bits and pieces, he recalled the whole business of his doll. It was not the usual kind of doll little girls play with. One of Joyonto's uncles had brought for him from Switzerland a 12-inch long figure of an old man, dressed in traditional Swiss style. Apparently, it was very lifelike. Although it was not mechanized, it was possible to bend and twist its limbs. Its face had a smile on it, and on its head, it wore a Swiss cap with a little yellow feather sticking out from it. Its clothes, especially in their little details, were perfect. Belt, buttons, pockets, collars, socks. There were even little buckles on the shoes. His uncle had returned from Europe shortly before Joyonto left for Bundi with his parents. The little old man had been bought in a village in Switzerland. The man who sold him had jokingly said to Joyonto's uncle, "He's called Fritz. You must call him by this name. He won't respond to any other." Joyonto said, "I had a lot of toys when I was small. My parents gave me practically everything I wanted, perhaps because I was their only child. But once I had Fritz, I forgot all about my other toys. I played only with him. A time came when I began to spend hours just talking to him. Our conversation had to be one-sided, of course, but Fritz had such a funny smile on his lips and such a look in his eyes that it seemed to me as though he could understand every word. Sometimes I wondered if he would actually converse with me, if I could speak to him in German. Now it seems like a childish fantasy, but at that time, the whole thing was very real to me. My parents did warn me not to overdo things, but I listened to no one. I had not yet been put in a school, so I had all the time in the world for Fritz. Joyonto fell silent. I looked at my watch and realized it was 9:30 p.m. It was very quiet outside. We were sitting in the drawing room. It was really, really very quiet. An oil lamp burnt in the room. I asked, "What happened to the doll?" Jayanto was still in deep thought. His answer to my question came so late that by that time, I had started to think that he had not heard me at all. I had brought it to Bundi. It was destroyed. Destroyed? How? Joyonto sighed. We were sitting out on the lawn having tea. I had kept the doll by my side on the grass. I was not really old enough to have tea, but I insisted. And in the process, the cup tilted and some of the hot tea fell on my pants. I ran inside to change and came back to find that Fritz had disappeared. I looked around and found quite soon that a couple of stray dogs were having a nice tug-of-war with Fritz. Although he didn't actually come apart, his face was battered beyond recognition, and his clothes were torn. In other words, Fritz did not exist for me anymore. He was dead. And then Joyanto's story intrigued me. What could possibly happen after that? I arranged his funeral, that's all. Meaning, I buried him under that Deodar tree. I had wanted to make a coffin. Fritz was, after all, a European. But I could find nothing, not even a little box. So, in the end, I buried him just like that. At last, the mystery of the Deodar tree was solved. We went to bed at around 10. Our room was a large one, and our beds had been neatly made. Not being used to doing a lot of walking, I was feeling rather tired after the day's activities. I fell asleep. A slight noise woke me up a little later. I turned on my side and found Joyonto sitting up on his bed. I asked, "What is it? Are you not feeling well, Joyonto?" Instead of answering my question, Joyonto asked me one himself. "Do you think the circuit house has got small animals? I mean, things like cats or mice?" I shouldn't be surprised if it does. Why? Something walked over my chest. That's what woke me. Rats and mice usually come in through drains, but I've never known them to climb on the bed. This is the second time I've woken up actually. The first time I had heard a shuffling noise near the window. Oh, if it was near the window, it is more likely to be a cat. Yes, but Joyonto still sounded doubtful. I said, didn't you see anything after you switched the light on? Nothing. But then I didn't switch it on immediately after opening my eyes. To tell you the truth, I felt rather scared at first. But when I did switch it on, there was nothing to be seen. That means whatever came in must still be in the room. Well, since both the doors are bolted from inside, I rose quickly and searched under the bed, behind our suitcases, and everywhere else in the room. I could not find anything. The door to the bathroom was closed as well. I opened it and was about to start another search when Joyonto called out to me softly, Shankar. I came back to the room. Joyonto was staring hard at the cover of his quilt. Upon seeing me, he pulled a portion of it near the lamp and said, look at this. I bent over the cloth and saw tiny brown circular marks on it. I said, well, these could have been made by a cat. Joyonto did not say anything. It was obvious that something had deeply disturbed him. But it was 2:30 in the morning. I simply had to get a little more sleep, or I knew I would just keep feeling tired. So after murmuring a few soothing words, such as, don't worry, I'm here with you, and who knows, those marks may have been on your quilt already when you went to bed, I switched off the light once more and lay down. I had no doubt that Joyonto had only had a bad dream. All those memories of his childhood had upset him, obviously, and that was what had led to his dreaming of a cat walking on his chest. I slept soundly for the rest of the night. If there were further disturbances, Joyonto did not tell me about them, but I could see in the morning that he had not slept well. Tonight, I must give him one of the tranquilizers I brought with me, I thought. We finished our breakfast by 9 as we had planned and left for the fort. Some of the Joyonto's old forgotten memories began coming back again, though fortunately they had nothing to do with his doll. There's that elephant on top of the gate, he exclaimed, and the turrets. And here is the bed made of silver and the throne. Look at that picture on the wall. I saw it there last time. But within an hour, his enthusiasm began to wane. I was so engrossed myself that I did not notice it at first. But while walking through a hall and looking at the chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, I suddenly realized Joyonto was no longer walking by my side. Where was he? We had a guide with us. Babu has gone out on the terrace, he told me. I came out of the hall and found Joyonto standing absent-mindedly near a wall on the other side of the terrace. What on earth is the matter with you? Why are you standing here looking morose even in a beautiful place like this? Joyonto simply said, have you finished seeing everything? If so, let's go. And we returned to the circuit house. A road through the hills took us back to the town. Joyonto, on our way back, was sitting with me in the back of the car. He was very quiet by nature, but his odd restlessness was worrying me. It might help if you told me what is your problem, I said. Joyonto shook his head. It's no use telling you, for you're not going to believe me. Okay, even if I don't believe you, I can at least discuss the matter with you, can't I? Fritz came into our room last night. Those little marks on my quilt were his footprints. There was very little I could do at that except catch hold of him by the shoulders and shake him. How could I talk sensibly to someone whose mind was obsessed with such an absurd idea? You didn't see anything, did you? I said finally. No, but I could distinctly feel that whatever was walking on my chest had 2 feet, not 4. I said to Joyonto upon reaching our room, it's nearly 12 o'clock. Should we not thinking of having a bath? You go first, Joyonto said. An idea came to my mind. Perhaps this was the only way to get Joyonto back to normalcy. If a doll had been buried somewhere 30 years ago, and if one knew the exact spot, it might be possible to dig the ground there. No doubt most of it would have been destroyed, but it was likely that we'd find just a few things, especially if they were made of metal, such as the buckle of a belt or brass buttons on a jacket. If Joyonto could actually be shown that that was all that was left of his precious doll, he might be able to rid himself of his weird notions. Otherwise, he would have strange dreams every night and talk of Fritz walking on his chest. And it could just make him go completely mad. Joyonto seemed to like my idea, but said, who will do the digging? Where will you find a spade? I laughed. Since there is a garden, there is bound to be a gardener. And if he offered a tip, he would be too happy to do the job for us. Joyonto did not accept the idea immediately. He went for his bath. At lunch, we ate nothing. After lunch, we went and sat in the cane chairs on the veranda. Around 3 p.m., we saw a man come into the garden. He was an old man. He was the gardener of that place. Will you ask him or should I? At this question from Joyonto, I raised a reassuring hand and went straight to the gardener. After I had spoken to him, he looked at me rather suspiciously. Why, Babu? Don't worry about the reason. I'll give you 5 rupees. Please do as you are told. I assured him. He relented. I beckoned to Joyonto, and as he came closer, I saw the pallor on his face. The gardener, in the meantime, had fetched a spade. Joyonto took us, leading the 3 of us, to the Deodar tree. He pointed at the ground about a yard from the trunk of the tree and said, here. Are you sure? I asked him. Joyonto nodded silently. How much did you dig? At least 8 inches. The gardener started digging. He kept on digging. Why was there no sign of the doll? A cry of a peacock made me turn my head for a moment. And in that instant, Joyonto made a strange sound. I quickly looked at him. His eyes were bulging. He raised his right hand and pointed at the hole in the ground with a finger that was visibly trembling. Then he said in a voice, what is that? The spade slipped from the gardener's hand. I too gaped at the ground, open-mouthed in horror, amazement and disbelief. There lay at our feet, covered in dust, lying flat on its back, a 12-inch long, pure white, perfect little human skeleton. Creepy? Well, such a thriller, such an interesting story, leaving the reader not know how to react. Friends, if you like the story, you may please like, share, and subscribe, and press the bell icon too to get all the updates about this channel. Your comments would be more than welcome. Thank you so much for all your love and support and encouragement that I keep getting through all your comments that you write to me. Thank you so much for listening to the story and watching the video. Wait for me till I come again with another story. Stay safe, stay happy,